You're about to enter a different realm of reality. A realm where the astonishing meets the fantastic. A realm of mystery, of possibility, of the unknown and unimaginable. You're entering a realm where the impossible becomes possible. So prepare yourself as you enter the realm of super awesome science.
Hey, guys. Rick, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And we have a special guest on, guys. Today we have Cliff Barackman. And you might know this face. You might have seen Cliff on some of those Bigfoot shows on TV. Like, Cliff, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll get right into it.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm Cliff Barackman. I'm a longtime Bigfoot nerd. I've been doing this kind of thing, like Bigfoot field research, since 1994. So that's 31 years, if my finger counting math is correct. I was a blogger when blogs were a big deal. At some point, that caught the attention of the Discovery networks, and Animal Planet invited me to participate in their television show, Finding Bigfoot, which I was one of the co-hosts of for 9 years. When that went off the air, I decided to continue working in the Bigfoot field, professionally, that is. Instead, I was an elementary school teacher beforehand.
Wow.
And so I decided to continue doing Bigfoot stuff. And so I opened up what's called the North American Bigfoot Center, which is a Bigfoot museum. It's outside of Portland, Oregon, in Clackamas County, which has the highest number of Sasquatch reports in Oregon. And we, at the North American Bigfoot Center, the NABC, we are basically focused on three main things. Number one, we're educating the public about Sasquatches, how these are just perfectly normal animals. And they're here. There's nothing to worry about necessarily, I mean, they're big animals and stuff. You got to stay away from them, like all big animals, like elk or whatever, but they're just perfectly normal animals, nothing weird and paranormal about them. Number two, we're using incoming information to drive our own field research. Because I like being in the woods and I like looking for evidence of Sasquatches and all that stuff. And number three, we're also trying to find and locate and curate and preserve historical research collections, because the first generation of Bigfooters are basically all dead at this moment. And the second generation of Bigfooters are getting kind of up there in numbers, right? So what happens to their collection when they die? Very often they get thrown away. So
Wow.
At the NABC here, we're trying to find these collections before they get thrown away and then preserve them, because Sasquatches are, in fact, real animals. Yeah, I've seen one. I know they're real, right? Therefore, discovery, if you want to call it that, is inevitable. They will eventually be recognized as a perfectly normal species of mammal here in North America. And all of this pre-discovery history that we're witnessing at this very moment will be of historical interest at some point. This is a very elongated, very prolonged, I should say, discovery process for a very large and kind of unexpected mammal. And I think it's going to be of great interest in the future. So that's what we're doing at the NABC, pretty much. So, and that's where I find myself today, 31 years in on researching these animals. And I think I'm drowning in the subject. I don't think there's any other path forward in my life at this moment. So
That's really cool.
A good way of putting it too.
Yeah. So that actually, you hit upon one of my first questions, was basically what have you seen and what evidence what things have you experienced related to Bigfoot while you're out in the field, while you're out there and has it all been in the Pacific Northwest, or have you found these things all over the place?
Oh, no, not even close to all the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific Northwest is equated most commonly with Sasquatches because all of the early Bigfoot researchers lived here. Many up in Harrison Hot Springs and up in Canada, British Columbia specifically, and Washington. And then the early writers basically lived here, and that's how most people learned about them. And those people got the gigs in the early documentaries in the 1970s and stuff, or the schlockumentaries, as I like to call them. And it's kind of like the same idea where the victors of the war get to write the history.
Sure.
That's basically how the Pacific Northwest became. Sasquatches were adopted as our unofficial mascot, sort of thing. But Sasquatches, like black bear and elk and all that jazz, live across the continent in suitable habitat, just like all the other large sort of mammals do.
So you're going to find them in the Appalachian Mountains. Like
yeah.
I've heard the down here in Florida, we have like what they nickname the swamp ape.
Mhm,
So like
mhm.
all that stuff is related, as you know, to essentially Bigfoot, Sasquatch, right?
Almost certainly the same species. Yeah, just a
Yeah.
very thinly dispersed, really rare animal that lives in small groups, essentially in suitable habitat. The one I saw, I didn't have a good sighting. It was at night through a thermal imager, but I saw it for about 8 or 9 seconds or something, walking across the hills through a thermal imager. You know, I wish I had a daylight sighting. I don't, but I do find footprints in my research areas, and then we do our best to document those. Of course, we're talking to witnesses all the time.
Yeah.
It's astonishing how many people have actually encountered these things, but are rather unwilling to speak about it publicly because, you know, so, but again, they're perfectly normal animals. You can see them just like you can see bear or moose or whatever else.
Yeah.
And once people get over that, I suspect an avalanche of new information, including probably footage and all that other stuff, will come pouring out once these animals are recognized.
And do you think in our lifetime, we're all young men in our, you know, we'll say 40s and 50s. In our lifetime,
54, yeah.
And I'm 53, so I knew we were all
52.
Close. Are
yeah,
we
young men? I assume you mean immature, right? Because I looked at that.
Are we gonna have? Do you think, in your opinion, what you're calling discoveries? So whether it be proof of evidence, what actual, you know, confirmed video documentation, or photographic evidence, or, you know, when people are, say, streaming live, because that's a new thing over the past 10 years, is all this, you know, IRL live streaming on all the different social medias. Do you think that's going to be where we're going to get some of our first kind of, you know, confirmed? Okay.
No, I really
don't. And you used the term Bigfooter. Is that a term that you use?
Sure.
Proud, as like a Trekkie or a Trekker might use in their nerddom?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I wave my freak flag high, as Jimi Hendrix suggests, right?
Excellent.
Absolutely. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised if in 5 years this whole mystery side of it is over. And
wow, that's soon. Huh.
I do because there's finally a promising avenue forward. There's a study in North Carolina, sponsored by North Carolina State University, that has been undertaken by a gentleman named Darby Orcutt. And I have a podcast about Sasquatches as well. It's called Bigfoot and Beyond. Bobo from the Finding Bigfoot show on Animal Planet, he and I do the podcast together.
Nice.
And we've had Darby, the guy in charge of the study, on our podcast, and I'm in regular contact with Darby as well with some other projects. So Darby has got a program. Darby's job at the university is, I think the official explanation or the official job title says it all: interdisciplinary project coordinator. So he basically gets like this department to talk to that department, and normally they don't, you know, geology doesn't talk to, you know, biomechanics or something. I don't know, like these different seemingly unrelated departments don't really talk to one another so much. So his job is to get them together. So Darby had this idea, and we kind of did it for Bigfoot stuff, but got it past the university guard, so to speak, by a more broader general description. It's something akin to we're giving. The whole idea is to try to identify unknown physical samples from North America.
Okay,
you know, that's basically it. So you have a hair that you don't know where it came from. Let's send it to Darby. He'll tell us. You have skin sample, you have a blood sample, you have this or that, or there's all these different avenues forward, right? And he's basically doing it for Bigfoot, basically, but it's the guard, so to speak. There is no guard. No one's stopping us from learning about these things. That's all nonsense too. But it's like, okay, we're giving PhD or grad students and postdoc students real samples that were really collected in North America. Wow. You apply whatever expertise you have on them. Go. That's kind of the gist, basically. And he's got all sorts of different projects all up and down the field, everything from AI, for the hair analysis to species or sample analysis, whatever, you name it. There's all sorts of things happening over there. And I have great hope, because I know Darby, I speak to him regularly. I have great hope that this study might put the whole mystery side of it to bed. And people say, are you going to be sad about that when that happens? Absolutely not. That's because my goal isn't to prove the species. I already know they're real. I'm not trying to prove it to anybody. I kind of don't care what other people think. I don't put a lot of stock in what people think, right?
Yeah.
I want to learn more about them. That's
Yeah.
my goal. I want to learn
Yeah.
about the species. So, and that's where the fun really starts, I think.
One thing that I'm super curious about is where they fit on our tree of life. You know what I mean? Because like, are they really close to us, or are they closer to a silverback ape? Like, if you think about it, there could be a wide range there. You know what I mean? Where if they're closer to us, they could be nearly as intelligent, have communication, have maybe even a language. I mean, do they have villages? Like what? You know, like, I mean, rudimentary. Like how close to us are they, or are they going to end up being closer to like a great ape, like a silverback or an orangutan, where there is that sort of, you know, there's rudimentary intelligence, but not quite our level, you know, and that's the part that I'm curious about. And I kind of lean towards they're pretty close to us, you know.
Well, to put a couple ideas forth first. First of all, I always speak about these things in biological terms. Okay.
Okay.
Because it turns out religions have cast their shadowy cloaks over this and obscured some. I mean, there's different facets and different filters we can look at the subject through, and I choose the safest one is biology. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Mormons will tell me these things are Cain wandering around. I've had Christian folks come on, say that they are here to glorify Jesus, and other Christian folks saying that they are here to distract us from the glory of Jesus. And like, there's all this stuff out there that is distracting from the animals.
Yeah.
So I want to put that out there first, is that I speak from biological terms, okay?
Sure
Because I
thing.
think that's the most respectful way to deal with these creatures.
Yeah.
So keeping that as my filter, because we all have one, we are apes. I want to put that out
True. Yes, absolutely.
Homo
Yeah.
sapiens are a species of ape. Okay.
Of great
Now,
ape.
of
Yeah.
course, our closest relatives on the ape and the extant apes, the ones that are still living that we know about, chimpanzees, right? We
Sure.
broke off. We shared a common ancestor with them. We went our way, they went theirs about 6 million years ago. Where are they on that tree? That's an interesting question. You call it a tree. I'm going to counter that with a bush. It is not a tree at all. And yeah.
Gotcha.
And because let's talk about evolution for a minute. The factual evolution. Again, we'll throw religion out. We'll throw all the other stuff out that gets in the way of how we view the world, and talk about what we know about how animals evolve. And
yeah.
And I'm going to consider evolution as a fact, by the way. It is literally the basis of biology, and therefore the basis of modern medicine. So if you choose to throw evolution out, feel free to stop taking your medications too, because that's what led to this, right? So again, I'm talking about science here, and I don't.
Yeah.
People always get pissed at me and whatever else. So I'm trying to cushion everybody's ego and hard-held beliefs best they can. Okay.
No, we love the science behind it, Cliff. So go.
Yeah. So evolution has been misconstrued for a long time by scientists, even as a linear progression. Okay. And that's why back when we were all kids in the 1970s, Bigfoot did not exist because it could not exist. There was no place in it in the evolutionary scheme of how apes and humans evolved. Okay. And that is because what we used to think is that one species was here, let's say Homo heidelbergensis, the precursors to Neanderthals, right? Homo heidelbergensis was here, and eventually they changed just enough so Neanderthals showed up, and they were just better at being alive than heidelbergensis was, and eventually drove the heidelbergensis extinct. And then Homo sapiens showed up, and we drove the Neanderthals extinct because we outcompeted them. We were just better at everything. That's not the way evolution works. Okay?
Yeah, I don't think so. Because didn't I hear that we actually have a little bit of Cro-Mag and Neanderthal DNA even within certain
Cro-Mags are actually Homo sapiens, if I understand.
Okay.
But Neanderthals, yes. In fact, my 23andMe, my dad's has 1.7%, which is kind of cool. But But the thing is, evolution does not progress linearly like that. Usually, there's side branches that come off. And these side branches persist for a while, and they either succeed or they don't. You know, maybe the main stem falls off and goes extinct, and the side branch goes on further, right? So you have to picture the evolutionary tree as more of a bush with all these sort of tendrils and branches going off on either side. Okay. Now, what in the late 1980s and early 1990s, that's how recent this is, by the way. They're in the 90s, let's just say, a paradigm shift in paleoanthropology occurred, where that linear structure to evolution was realized to be incorrect, because it used to be thought that only one animal can occupy a niche at the same time, like an ecological niche, you know?
Gotcha.
And we were it. We were the last biped standing, because we were walking around on two legs, and we're humanish and we're apey and all that stuff. And we were the ones occupying our niche. And so that's why Neanderthals went extinct, because they can't occupy the same niche as us, right? Turns out that's incorrect. That assumption was actually made, I believe, out of bacteria or something, or viruses or something. But it doesn't apply to everything up and down the scale, so to speak. So now we know, and this is as recent as the 1990s, that numerous bipedal ape-like animals, like humans, for example, occupied the landscape, not only at the same time in history, but actually the same locations. So yeah, so they're like humans and Neanderthals lived side by side for almost 300,000 years. Heidelbergensis were in the last 100,000 years, which is blink of an eye, right? Off the top of my head, we have Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Homo denisovans, Homo longi. We had the last Homo erectus were around. We had Homo naledi. We had Homo floresiensis. We had Homo luzonensis. Now, that's off the top of my head. 8 species like that in the last 100,000 years.
And they were all basically living side by side.
Well, yeah, throughout mostly in Africa, but in other places as well. Like Homo erectus, for example, was discovered in Indonesia, in Java. But the point here is that these species occupied the landscape at the same time. And we are guessing at this point, we being the royal scientific we, think that we know about less than 2% of all species that ever lived through the fossil record. Less than 2%.
That's crazy.
So think about all these different species living and coexisting on their various branches of this bush going forward in time. Who's to say that they all have gone extinct and Homo sapiens are the last ones left? If that is the case, let's just assume that's the case, which is the accepted scientific paradigm at the moment, that humans are the last biped standing. This would be the only time in the last 6 million years that was true. And this time that we magically exist in, where the humans are the only ones left, is 10,000 years old, because we have Neanderthals from 12,000 years ago, right? So the last 10,000 years is the only time in all planetary history that we were the only ones. Well, I mean, since we evolved, last 6 million years seems unlikely, especially when there's all this evidence from not only North America but other parts of the world that bipedal, ape-like, human-like animals are still there.
Because the smaller one, what did you named it there? What was it?
Homo
It might still be alive on one of the islands, right? Isn't that
on Flores? Literally on Flores, where it was discovered. It turns out on Flores is like a burrito shape. To me, everything's burrito shaped. Like a burrito shaped island. On one side of the island, they have these things called ibugogo, which are small, diminutive, sort of hairy bipeds that they say went extinct a couple 100 years ago, 200 years ago, in this particular cave that they know about. And on the other side of the island, there's another species described pretty much exactly the same when you get outside the cultural stuff, because I think the Nuages people, I can't remember the name, they describe ibugogo as this, but on the other side of the island, a different tribe describes their little guys as something else. Probably the same species and probably still alive. In fact, there's an anthropologist named Dr. Gregory Forth from Canada somewhere, on the more east in Canada, I forget where. He's written a great book called In Between Apes and Man, I believe. It's over on my shelf over there. And he argues these things are alive today. I have spoken to reliable recent witnesses on the island of Flores who say they see these things. So this whole idea of relict hominoid has really taken off. And the young scientists, who are always the ones making some of the best decisions on what to study and how to pursue research, because the old guard is we old folks are kind of set in ways, and we die off. Luckily, we die off, and the young guys and gals take over, right? The younger scientists who kind of grew up in the shadow of Bigfoot, so to speak, are very open to this now that there is a place in the scientific paradigm that we can fit these things in. Because in the 70s, they do not exist because they could not exist.
Yeah.
Now they could exist. The question is, do they?
Yeah. Wow. Gap, you're where's it located? Oregon. Boring, Oregon.
Yeah, outside of Portland, about 35 minutes outside of downtown. Like you hop on a plane, get off, you can be at the center in 35, 40 minutes.
There you go. So this is going to bring me to a little bit of the evidence side of things then. So I want a couple of clarifications here. So I had heard that there was DNA evidence, that they took blood samples, they found hair samples and things, and were able to get DNA that was close to human, but not. It was an unknown primate. Now, do you know if is that true, or am I just hearing things?
No, if we had DNA, it wouldn't be a mystery animal anymore. No,
Gotcha.
We do not have DNA. There was a very high-profile study done for a number of years that was kind of mishandled in a lot of ways, and a lot of money went into it. Nothing ever showed up about it. When the paper was published, the larger journals wouldn't touch it because the peer review didn't come back favorably, from what I understand. So the person published their own journal and published it there and didn't say anything about that. And it kind of did some workarounds like that don't give it a lot, don't lend it a lot of scientific credibility.
Gotcha.
In fact, a PhD in chemistry took interest, who had seen a Sasquatch, took interest in this and wrote an entire book about this particular study, saying that why it was flawed. He acknowledges that they may have had Bigfoot samples, but it was a flawed study, and here's why.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So that's probably what you're referring to, but there's always
maybe that's what I heard about.
Maybe, but Bigfoot land is like everywhere else. People say things, and then 3 or 4 stories later, it's changed in the telephone game. But the fact is, we do not currently have Bigfoot DNA, or Bigfoot would be a proven species, because one of the relict homino, or one of the species I mentioned earlier, Homo denisovan, kind of a lot of news because we also interbred with them. It turns out they were literally discovered through DNA. They found a segment of finger bone, a phalange from a finger, and they thought it was Neanderthal because of the similarities. But you only have like a 1 centimeter long piece of bone to work with. They did a DNA thing on it. They discovered it's not Neanderthal at all. It's an entirely new species. So you can prove a new species solely based on DNA, which is what we're hoping to do with the Bigfoot thing, because the other option is a gun, and nobody really wants these things killed.
Of course, you don't want to. That would be a tragedy,
So welcome, Brett. Brett showed up late here, but
Brett, I didn't want to interrupt.
You're sitting there very quietly while I ramble on. Very kind of you.
And I do want to say to the chat, thanks for bringing that up, Gap. And anyone in the chat that has a question for Cliff, we'll put it up and try to get it answered.
Bigfoot Dwarf has a question here. Any updates on the video recently released on Cliff's channel?
Oh, that must be the Walla Walla footage. No, I've not had a chance to go back there. And again, I don't even know if it's a Bigfoot. It might be, but I think that was the important part about the see, let me back up a little bit. I do have a YouTube channel, but the way the YouTube channel came about is that the museum, the North American Bigfoot Center, and part of the way we keep our doors open is that we have a membership program. It's one of these Patreon things for $6 a month. Beer, I view $6 as a beer and a tip, right? And so for $6 a month, you get like blog updates and things that I think are important to the subject, or recent updates on field stuff. But the real joy of it, the real value, I suppose, of it is that museum members get 2 video documentaries that we make in the shop every single month, about our own field research usually. And so what we do now is that we release them on the 15th of the month or thereabouts, and at the last day of the month, and you get 2 every single month. But, we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now. So as we go on, is thinking, I'm going to use the YouTube, interface to try to broaden our reach a little bit. And, we monetize the videos, and so we make like $100 a month or something like that on it. Not that much, but I'm a business owner. I'll take $100. I think that's great. I'm very thankful for it, that people care about what we're doing. So I'm taking older videos from a couple of years ago, and then I'm putting them out on the public YouTube channel for free. So our museum members get 2 every single month, and I know the one that was published, I think that's going to be published in a couple of days. We filmed that one like last Thursday, so it's pretty quick. Okay. It's a pretty quick turnaround. So that you get 2 a month, but the public YouTube channel only gets 1 a month, and they're way old. Just kind of a way to share what we're doing, what we have been doing and stuff. So I'm sure that this person was referring to the Walla Walla footage that you can see on the North American Bigfoot Center YouTube page.
So that's also Washington State, right? Walla Walla.
Yeah, Walla Walla is in fact in Washington State, but it's very close to the border. And in fact, the Blue Mountains, which is just south of Walla Walla, was where most of the stuff that we investigate is. And this particular piece of footage on the Walla Walla River happened to be in Oregon, just across the state line, but right, the same general area.
Steph likes listening to you, Cliff.
Well, thank you, Steph. I sure appreciate that. I'll take every kind word you have, because you'd be astonished at the mental illness that throws the negative ones on a pretty regular basis. So
for myself, what makes me a believer, if a Bigfooter, whatever the terms we want to use, is growing up in Canada. We, lots of Aboriginal people, First Nations people, Native people, whatever the proper term is this week. They're the ones that originally had some stories passed on verbally, like ancestors and whatnot. It's not like we learned it in school, but it was things that kids talked about. And then a little bit of the Patterson film on TV and stuff when that eventually was popular on TV. I guess, like you said, growing up in the 70s and 80s, we had limited ways that we learned about stuff or saw, new pop culture things that came to be. So whether it be newspapers or, a television program like That's Incredible, or, not the news necessarily, but
In Search of with Leonard Nimoy.
Yourself, Cliff, I know a lot of it you have done, but talking to First Nations people in North America, do you hear some very, interesting stories from elders, or from stories that have been passed on by elders? And is that a big part of, separate of, seeing them, finding the footprints, those experiences? Do these stories strongly back up most of the beliefs and stuff that people do have when you hear stories from several different kinds of people from throughout the country?
Well, I think that what the native stories really point to is that we're dealing with something that's just part of the environment here. We're dealing with some sort of regularly occurring animal, essentially, because when you look at various cultures' beliefs about Sasquatch, the various indigenous cultures' beliefs about Sasquatch, they don't always agree. Frankly, they really don't. Some cultures view these things as some sort of guardian of the forest. Some view them as some sort of negative sign that something's going to happen to you or a family member. Some view them as good things, some view them as bad things, and everywhere in between. So there is no blanket native belief about Sasquatches, other than, I would think, and again, I'm not native, I'm not qualified to speak for them, but from my perspective, from what I have seen and interacted with native people who we get in the shop all the time, I've got close friends who are native, etc. But there's no uniform natives believe this, right? But the fact that all native people in suitable habitats have stories of giant things, bipedal things out in the woods, that, in my opinion, is very strong evidence that these things are really there, because these same cultures have stories of bear and coyote,
of course,
and all these other animals that are also there. And the Bigfoot stories follow a certain flavor of motif. There's often a certain flavor of them, like the stealer of children or boogeyman stuff, because they're scary animals, right? And it makes perfect sense that this would be occurring, and it makes perfect sense that the stories would differ as well, not only because the cultures themselves are different, but also the Sasquatches are also individually different as well. Remember, they're apes like we are in some ways. How close to us they are, that's debatable, right? But they're very smart, very intelligent. They are individuals. Just, chimpanzees are individuals as well. Some of them are cool, some of them aren't. Gorillas, same thing. Some are grumpy and some aren't. Like they all have their personal personalities based on the cumulative experience that they have had in their existence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and one bad Sasquatch egg can, ruin it for an entire tribe, Like if some Sasquatch is being a jerk about stuff and ruining things and steals a kid or something and eats it or whatever, that Sasquatch or Sasquatches in general are not going to have a good reputation amongst those people, right? So
do you think they're a tribal?
No,
no.
Okay. No, not a bit. They're not tribal like that at all.
They're quite loner.
I don't think that's the case either. I think that they have. I think that they work in small family groups. Believe it or not, very few researchers have really undertaken the effort to study what social structures of Sasquatches might look like. I have.
That's what I'm curious about.
It would be hard, right? Without seeing more than one at the same time.
It is. Well, that's just it. The most sightings are of individuals. But that doesn't mean that there's not more than one there or in the vicinity. That just means they only saw one. And Sasquatches, if they're nothing else, they're really good at like staying out of view. They do mess up. They do get seen and stuff. Like a case in point, there's another video I'll probably be posting in sometime next year where I was in the Blue Mountains just this past July, and I was there for Bigfoot, but at the time we were tracking wolves because the manager at the museum, Nico is his name. He has a paleontology business. He likes dinosaurs. He's a nerd. He's a tracker, that kind of thing. That's his nerdiness. He had never tracked a wolf before, and I go, oh well, I found wolf tracks last year when I was up here on this one road. Why don't we go look there? And we walked a few miles on the road, and sure enough, we found wolf tracks, and we were there. Wow. And then immediately knocking started in the woods. And knocking is one of the signs that Sasquatches might be in your vicinity. And so we went in the woods 3 or 4 times. It kept knocking. And when we were in there, it was totally quiet. When we got out, it started knocking again. And this is all in the video and documented it. I was the only person out of 3 that didn't get to see the Sasquatch. The other 2 guys who were with me, they both saw the thing. I didn't get a chance to see it.
Really?
We cast some footprints and stuff. One was there. We got prints and everything. But if these things are really good at staying out of sight, So to get back to the social structure thing, one of the only ways we can study Sasquatches in their normal environment without changing their behavior, because if you see a Sasquatch, chances are that Bigfoot knows it's been observed and will leave the area. In any way, it's going to almost certainly change its behavior somehow once it knows it's been observed, right? But so the only way to observe their behaviors without modifying their behaviors in any way is by tracking them, essentially. Finding their footprints, finding where they go, why they go there, their foraging sign, maybe there's more than one animal in the area, etc. Very few Bigfoot researchers have paid attention to that. Most Bigfoot researchers are really almost solely interested in observations of the animal, sighting reports, which is fine. I'm not a people person, I'm good with people. It's not like, I don't bite or anything, but I'm not exactly, I'm an introvert. I know it's hard to tell when you see me on television or right now or something like that, but I was also an elementary school teacher for 14 years. And what you're seeing is Teacher Cliff. But I care less about observations of, seeing a Sasquatch is cool. There's a point on a map. One was here then, but what are you going to learn about it as it runs across the road in front of your car? Not very much. No doubt. Yeah,
you have a map in your home where you've cited everywhere.
No, we've got a map in the museum, and we also have paper maps. We write exact locations down, and we also have a Google Earth there for our research.
That was where I was going with the question. Was from the research, where is it believed that the greatest number would be currently?
Well,
that's most recent research.
That's not that information would not be reflected in the research, unfortunately. Because what you would see based on sighting reports is where humans and Sasquatches both inhabit the environment. That's what you would learn.
Have to live there or be there, right? I guess.
Yeah. There's almost certainly more Bigfoots in British Columbia than anywhere else. Almost certain. Okay. Because British Columbia is not only literally almost the whole thing is perfect habitat. Almost the whole thing. But it's also bigger than Oregon, Washington, and California combined. So it certainly probably holds more Sasquatches than anywhere else in the world. I think it's probably better than Alaska, but Alaska is also very large. So who knows, maybe one of those two. But we don't hear a lot from the inside of British Columbia because almost nobody lives out there.
Yeah,
right?
Most people.
Right.
Yeah, and you need a Bigfoot in the same spot as you have a human to have a sighting report. And that human has to be willing to talk about it, which is a big if. Sure, and there has to be someone to talk about it with. And that person who they speak to has to have a way to publish it. Otherwise, it's never going to come to my ears or yours. So it's a perfect storm of events to have a Bigfoot sighting that people hear about. I hear about a lot at the shop, but and my ears to the ground. And I've been doing this for 31 years, so I'm an anomaly, you know. So that I hear a lot more than say you guys would, right?
Yeah.
But that's the situation. It's a very rare event, kind of, to read about a Bigfoot thing because of all those things that have to align. Otherwise, you're not going to hear about them.
Cool.
Yeah, but getting back to the social structure deal. In my particular area, one of my research areas, I have 3 or 4 that I frequent. One, I'm out at least 1 day a week. I was out twice last week. 1 to 3 days a week, I'm out. I consider it part of my job at this point to go do it. I don't even always want to do it because there's things I have property I have to manage at home and stuff. But I'm finding the same 2 individuals repeatedly: a 14-inch individual and a 12-inch individual, and occasionally a 15-inch individual. And to me, and they're always the same animals in the same general, like 5 or 8 mile on a side area. That to me says something. Again, we need to, about 6 or 8 miles away, we're finding another 3 individuals: a 17-inch foot, a 14, another 14, which is probably just a kind of standard female size, and an 8 to 10-inch foot. So another 3 individuals. Okay. So we're pushing into this territory now of trying to identify repeated individuals in an area to try to learn about how they exist, not if they exist. I think if you're still arguing if they are real or not, you're behind the learning curve. I think now is the time to look at them like a biological species and learn how they interact with their environment, what they need, how they live, how they interact with each other, and their territory size, and all the behaviors and all that cool stuff, the really neat stuff. Not like, do you think they're real? That question's been answered decades ago for me.
Gotcha. So that gets into something that I had. I've been following Jeff Meldrum. I'm sure you know Jeff.
I literally got a text from him 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
waiting until we're done to answer it. But yeah,
I'd love to have him on.
Bring him on if you want.
But yeah, I'd love to have him on and talk too. But
I'm lower hanging fruit than Jeff is. Trust me.
Well, he's busy too with his. I'm sure you guys are all busy, but I mean, being a professor at the university, he's got to be busy most of the year teaching his classes and stuff, right? He's still teaching.
The thing is, I usually said no to podcasts, but when I saw how nerdy you guys really were, and I said, "Oh, I got to be these guys, man." Because I mean, I'm a dungeon man. I play D&D. Like I've got.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do too. Yeah.
I'm a nerd at heart, and I figure, well, these guys are my brothers, man. I got to go on their podcast. So.
Thank you, Cliff.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
But cool. Speaking with foot morphology, I've heard that you guys can tell, like you said, you can tell individuals that are either hanging around an area or moving throughout a state or something. And you can actually follow them based on the footprints. Because I had heard that there was a footprint found somewhere in Northern California, and then a few years later, it had the same like, I don't know, pattern of the toes or identifying marks, whatever. And it was up in like Oregon or somewhere, you know what I mean? Like, so they knew that it had traveled from Northern California into Oregon throughout somewhere in its lifetime within these few years. And so you guys are finding a lot of that stuff then, from what I gather, based on what you were just saying there then.
I'm very familiar with the data set, and I don't know about what footprint you're talking about. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that it's one of the few that hasn't crossed my desk yet. I think it's probably fair to say I may own the largest footprint cast collection in the world. I'm not sure about that one.
Wow.
Dr. Meldrum and I share casts quite a bit. We're always, I texted him a couple weeks ago about some new casts that he hadn't seen yet. So, I mean, it's very possible, especially Northern California to Oregon. I mean, you could, if you're in the right place, you can walk 3 steps and be in either state. So that's very, very possible.
True,
but the furthest distance that I am personally aware of a Sasquatch traveling, at least what I think is probably the same Sasquatch. Because again, when your job is to speak about Sasquatch to the public, you're going to be wrong a lot when you say things. So I always say, check my facts, double check me. I'm incorrect a lot, but that's part of my job description in a way, is to tell the truth as I think I see it, and if I'm incorrect, that's great. I get to learn something. But the furthest away that I'm allowed, I'm aware of, I should say, that one individual Sasquatch tracks were found is 60 miles, and that was in Northern
Gotcha.
California. Between Bluff Creek and Hyam Palm, which is about 60 miles. But oddly enough, it's also one mountain ridge the entire way, which is kind of cool. Adds some sort of
Okay.
credibility to it. If they weren't the same animal, they were probably had to be very closely related, I would think.
It doesn't seem far.
No.
You know, like
No.
as much as we, you know, do or don't know, like, do you think it's possible for them to travel, you know, thousands of miles? Like, if
I don't
John
think
was to see
they do.
like a, you know, a skunk ape in Florida, is it possible it walked all the way from, you know, Seattle area or something? Like, are they
I wouldn't think so. No.
territorial to, you know, where they grow up is kind of where they stay, or, you know, where they're born?
We of course don't know, and I mean, is it possible? Sure. I mean, I could walk it, but you're not going to see me do it either. The evidence, again, I'm an evidence guy, right?
Yeah.
The evidence leads me to speculate or hypothesize about things, and I see if the evidence continues to hold it up, the scientific process, right? The evidence indicates that these things kind of stay put, honestly. Now, again, I'm trying to broaden my research areas, because if I start finding the same individuals in other areas that are adjacent, well, that's of interest. You know, but the two areas, well, the three areas right now that I'm working that we've pulled casts out of, they seem to be the same ones again and again, and year round. Okay, so the same, like the 14 and the 12 out of that one spot, that's we find those two animals oftentimes in the same, like maybe 100 yards apart, or sometimes right together. We think it's a mother and a juvenile that's not quite ready to be out on his or her own.
Yeah.
We don't know that, though. We're guessing. We're asking questions and seeing if we can find the answer. Those two animals, we find their footprints in the same 8-mile stretch year round. The only thing that changes is the elevation. And during the summer, they're higher up. And that might be a human factor too, because I can't get to those higher elevations in the wintertime. So maybe it might be a human factor. We don't know yet. We just don't know. I'm out there again 1 to 3 days a week. We're pulling casts as much as we can and taking photographs of other prints. And a lot of the stuff you can't even cast. Like, I'm not a great tracker, but I'm okay. I'm an okay tracker. I'm a hobbyist plus, maybe. I have a lot of experience. Any tracker will tell you most prints that you see in the ground, most sign of animals, you can't pour plaster in and just say, look at this, because you just go, oh, it's a blobby, whatever, blobby blob of plaster. But, you know, I'm out there trying to document the evidence I find, and my research indicates it's just I have to base it on mine, because I don't know if anybody else is telling the truth, but I know I am.
Yeah.
You know, and I also don't know the biases that people are introducing to their own evidence. And so I try to discount. I mean, everybody else's stuff is interesting, but my stuff is the stuff that I can hang my hat on, because I'm the one finding it, and I know I'm not lying, and I know, you know, may not be aware of my own social filters that skew my perspective, but I try to eliminate them the best I can. And
you're not fudging numbers to make things fit. You're doing you're dealing. Yeah, exactly.
I'm just learning about it. You know,
exactly.
That's it. Yeah. So my research indicates that these things stay put, essentially, in one area. Now, mind you, I said the 14 and the 10 and the 12-inch individual. I'm guessing these are a female and its offspring, right? Over at the other spot with the 17, the 14, and the 8. We're finding the 14 and the 8, right? Well, actually, we found a lot of the 17 too are there. But okay, so are those two different family groups? Is it we almost never find the 15 in association with the 14 and the 12. Could this be a situation, as I think it was with that 60-mile distance thing, that the big male is basically moving through the area and doing booty calls with the females, you know? Because that 60-mile stretch, in one part of the year, that animal was found up in Bluff Creek with a different female, the one that was filmed in 1967. But in April, his footprints, as presumably a he, his footprints were found down in Hyam Palm with a different 14-inch individual.
So you're saying Bigfoot's a player?
Bigfoot does what it needs to do to propagate the species.
A mating trail.
Well, no, that's good. That's good to know.
That's also the same social structure as orangutans.
Yeah.
And isn't that interesting that model already exists in the ape species? So we're kind of guessing at this point that's what's going on, but frankly, it's just a guess. We need more data. We need more serious researchers out there trying to find and document the tracks so we can observe these animals without them knowing about it and learn about what they're doing when no one's looking.
Wow.
Interesting.
Speaking of that, if there, do you have a network of people around the country? Like if there are people in a different state or a different area than you are that are interested in using a scientific process the way you are, is there a way for them to sort of be in the loop with you? Would that be joining the museum and joining the club the best way to do that?
Yeah, I'm not a group sort of person.
Okay.
I was kicked out of Boy Scouts. Like I just don't play well with others.
And he was a teacher, John.
Yeah.
Had enough.
I'm not a group. I don't run a group by any means. And
Gotcha.
our members get first access to a lot of cool things that we're doing, and and there's some product stuff in there too that they only get. And there's events like Dr. Meldrum will be speaking at my museum on April 10th. But it's only
nice.
for example, and we also try to live stream those too for people who don't live in our area. But there's, I would say, if you're interested in being a citizen scientist in the Bigfoot realm, first of all, start going
out there.
Find a spot with. Here's the best thing you can do: look at a map. Go to something like the Bigfoot Mapping Project or one of these websites that kind of likes to put dots on a map where people have seen these things, right? Or the bfro.net, you break it down by county. They don't have a map version. Well, they don't really have a map version, but you could read more detailed sightings there. These are all good resources. Go to where you live, find the nearest cluster of sightings, nearest one to you, the nearest one. And cluster in Bigfoot is like 2 to 5 reports. If you have 2 to 5 reports in like a 5-mile area, that's hot. Go there. Because it's not like we're tracking amphibians and there's a bunch of them. Sasquatches are very rare and they're mobile. So if you can find a cluster like that in an area close to your house, it has to be close to your house. The other stuff far away, that's cool. Go there for vacation. But if it's close to your house, you'll go there more often. You'll burn less money doing it. You'll be more excited when you find something because these are your Bigfoots, so to speak, right? So, and again, I'm out 1 to 3 days a week at this moment because I've got a spot within an hour and a half of my house. I got 2 or 3 spots within an hour and a half of my house I could be at. It's 1:47. I can be there by 3 if I really wanted to.
But if you go there, is there going to be 11 other guys with big sticks banging on the trees? And
I don't even do that. Well, no, because I don't talk about my spots. I don't share my fishing spots.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah. I don't share where I'm going, and some other Bigfooters say, "Oh, that's because you're possessive, or that's because you're jealous, or that's because of whatever they see in themselves that they accuse other people of doing, as humans do, right?" No, it's because I don't want to get hoaxed. I've been specifically targeted by hoaxers numerous times.
Do you think there's any?
I guarantee they're going to plant evidence. Guarantee it.
Yeah, and do you think there's another side of it too? If too many people know about it, and suddenly you've got 100 people traipsing through the woods, do you think the Bigfoot would leave?
Possibly, quite possibly.
And then you've sort of upset that natural area that they had.
Yeah, absolutely. I prefer to study these things by not being intrusive. I mean, the nighttime stuff on finding Bigfoot and everything, I call that the quick and dirty way of getting in and out, right? Because we had a week to go to a spot that some of us had never been to before. I'd never been to a lot of these locations as we traveled there. Luckily, we had a very large sightings database. My work, I had 1,500 sightings, I think, collected at that point. Matt Moneymaker's BFRO has probably more sighting reports than anywhere. I've been doing it longer. And we had a nationwide network of sighting reports that we could rely on to find the best spots. But we basically had 2 or 3 nights to go out and get something for television. And my preferred method of studying these animals is going out and slowly walking the roads and looking for footprints and other sign. And I think that's the best way forward. But on television, you just don't have that option. It's bad TV, boring, and they're not, et cetera. So we go in and make a lot of noise, try to stir something up and get out to see if we can get some noise. We're very successful at it. I will say that we're very successful because we're batting about 50%. And God, if you're batting 50% in baseball, you're a Hall of Famer, right? And Bigfoot's way harder than baseball.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Are you a drone nerd yet? Is that
I have a drone, but I also live a half mile from an airport, so I don't get a chance to get it up in the air very often, unfortunately. But I don't use it much for what I do, because what I do is walking the roads at 1 mile an hour looking for animal sign. You know, and I'm not sure drones would help me with that. But Matt Moneymaker, who's kind
Just
of
another tool.
It is. Matt Moneymaker's put these things to great use. Matt runs the BFRO, of course, BFRO.net, and he does public expeditions. You know, for a couple $100, you can go spend a weekend with Bigfoot people and network and learn from people who do that all the time in really good areas. And what Matt has been doing is like, okay, night ops, they all base like, okay, you go here, you go here. They all spread out in their various directions. And if any of these people get a hit, like a knock or a noise, then Matt, when he's on these expeditions, sends up his thermal drone into the sky and goes that direction to try to. He's really used these things effectively and efficiently, really, to great. We haven't got a video yet, but I think that holds a lot of promise.
I think so too.
What I'm doing, so I don't use them so much.
Yeah.
And my other question was, when was the last time you went for a hike, a nature walk, like maybe not necessarily working, and didn't bring like a bag of plaster in your backpack? Like, does that ever happen for you now, or are you always prepared and ready to go?
I've got plaster in my car, man.
Yeah.
I always have plaster in my car, always. So I don't know. My wife kind of doesn't bug me. She doesn't ever bug me. She's wonderful, but she pokes me about that. It's like, well, can we go somewhere without Bigfoot?
Yeah, can we leave the plaster at home this time?
Yeah, like the third wheel is always Bigfoot whenever we go anywhere. But that's also where I like to go. So it's not always easy for me.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Well, let me grab we don't want to keep you for too long. We usually go about an hour, a little bit longer.
That's fine.
But let me grab a couple of questions from the chat here. So we had one from Mr. B a while back that was like, these things, I think he's alluding to how elusive they are. He says it seems weird that they're not finding a lot of solid evidence like scat bones, roadkill, anything like that. And I want to know if this is true as well. Like when I was in Seattle living there, and I went hiking every single week in those mountains, only one time did I ever come across a bear. Only once. And only once did me and my friends come across a couple of wolves. So in all those years of us hiking, to me, those are very rare animals. Is that the same? And I've heard these stories I've heard ideas that like you're never going to find a dead bear in the woods. You're probably never going to find a dead wolf or anything like that. Like, is that true? Like, and is that why Bigfoot stuff is so rare as well? Because it's one of those animals that's just that elusive and that rare.
Yeah, some of that I think is spot on. People say they must be of this great intelligence, probably smarter than us because we never see them. So, well, there's actually quite a few reports. There's actually a lot of people do see these things. They're very rare. And I always counter, and when I'm at the museum, is why don't people see them more? And I always say, well, first of all, people do see them a lot more than you'd ever realize. And then second of all, I ask how these people who lived in Oregon or Washington all their lives. I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman, I would have seen one by now, all that sort of nonsense. I said, how many bear have you seen in your entire life? You just said one, right? And I've seen a lot of bear in my life. I'm a bear hunter. So great, put a number on it. How many bear have you actually seen? So, oh God, I've probably seen 25 or 30 of these things, which is a lot of bear. If you've seen that many bear, you've been in the woods a lot. There's 35,000 of them in Oregon right now. 35,000 of them in Oregon. And they live, 12 years, 15 years? They're probably like dogs, I think. They live probably about that long. So 15 years ago, there were another 35, So
you think Bigfoot live that long?
No, well, let's the
bears is what you were talking about, right?
Yeah. That's a bear thing. They probably live about as long as dogs. Now, there's people who know far more about ecology than I do have estimated that there's probably at least 100 bears for every one Bigfoot. Dr. Meldrum puts it at 150 or more per Bigfoot, right?
Gotcha.
I think, so that tells us if using those real rough numbers, maybe 350 Bigfoot in Oregon.
Wow, okay.
Now, they live a lot longer. All ape species live to be about 40 years or so in the wild. And there's also a law in biology that states the larger the species is, the longer it lives. It's not true of like dog breeds, but it's true of cetaceans, Whales, for example, live a lot longer than dolphins. There are some whales out there that are 200 or 300 years old.
Yeah.
And Sasquatches might live 50 years or so or more in the wild. And if there's say 300 of them and they live about 50 years, I don't know. I mean, my math is probably a little fuzzy. There's smarter people out there than me, but doesn't that say like maybe 6 of these things are dying a year or something? Like I don't know how that math works, but not that many. Not that many. And they are hyper aware and they are really good at what they do. But so are bears. I have a wonderful book in my library right over here behind me, written by a team of black bear biologists in Idaho. And they I think the name of the book is like Shadows in the Forest, because black bear are almost never seen.
I've seen quite a few black bears, and I live in like a suburb of Vancouver.
Oh, yeah. So you're
like half hour from downtown, but I'm at the bottom of a mountain. So when they come down from that mountain looking for some junk food or whatever they're doing, you do see them. Like, I'm in an area too where all the garbage cans are bear proof.
Yep.
You know, so they can't. But yet you watch videos and we watch bears like go and open up a Toyota 4Runner door and go inside a car or a truck. Like, they can't open the damn garbage cans, but they can open up like car doors and, you know, and go into cars and stuff. But I've never been scared. But yeah, it's I guess a hot spot's a good way to put it.
Well, yeah, and consider this as well.
Before Christmas, there'll be a couple bears walking around the local shopping mall. Like,
the problem with seeing Sasquatches going in your trash can is that people have seen that, by the way, many times. Yeah. But they also put the lid back on.
Wow,
interesting.
I have 2 eyewitness reports of them with exhibiting that behavior. They put the lid back on. So how would you kind of know when a bear went through, you know, it's like if a toddler went through your trash, but
damage control
are a little bit more savvy than that. So,
and then, so Gap had one, he says, are there footprints going all the way back to the 1800s?
Yes.
He's heard about that. And
no cast.
Wondering if that's true.
There are well, of going back before that, in John Grain's books, actually, he noted some native artifacts, stone feet or stone carvings of what appear to be feet that they're broken, unfortunately, but if they were intact and we had both sides, it would be about 16 inches long, which is of interest.
So that's them recreating a footprint because casting wasn't a thing?
Don't know. Yeah, well, don't know. I mean, yeah, casting wasn't a thing, certainly, but that I could see how that, it sure looks like a foot to me. But I could see how that would be some sort of native artist interpretation of what he observed in the ground. But you fast forward a few hundred years or 1,000 years or more, and then white people showed up, and as they started pushing into the middle of the continent, they started running across these animals as well. Because first they populated the coast, and they started pushing in the interior. As they did so, you can follow their progression and the sighting reports because they started reporting to the newspaper. People would describe seeing 7-8 foot tall hairy men or whatever in the woods running or killing deer or exhibiting ape behaviors that weren't even discovered until the 1960s when Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall were doing their things. And they would report seeing footprints in the ground and describe them as 16 inches long or whatever as well. So everything that we get today has been reported for as long as people have been in the same areas as Sasquatches.
One more quick question. What's your most recent encounter or / sighting for yourself?
Well, I haven't seen one for many, many years. I saw one in 2011. I saw something else on the side of the road once. I'm not 100% sure what that was. That was in 2017. But my most recent activity, I suppose, is I found tracks. What day is it today? Is it Tuesday?
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I found tracks Friday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's soon enough.
Yeah. I found some tracks out there, along with some really interesting tree breaks that were in line at the tracks, and some interesting stuff.
People were wondering the BFRO. It's the Bigfoot. Wow, what was the
research organization?
Researchers organization. I'm not a member. Again, I don't join groups, but Matt, the guy who runs the whole thing, is a good friend of mine, and we talk fairly often. So I'm not in any groups because I find that people get real touchy about groups, and if you're in this group, then I can't talk to you. And
turns out it happens a lot with Star Wars fans too.
Everybody. So
yeah, it happens with the Star Wars and collecting.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah, it happens everywhere.
Movie fans.
People ruin everything.
Yes, they do.
But then again, some of my favorite people are people, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lax says sometimes he's had large animals in his backyard, and many people just still won't even see them. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
you know.
You mentioned doing some work with I think you mentioned he was also a professor. Was it North Carolina or
Oh yeah, North
somewhere?
Carolina State University. His name's Darby Orcutt.
Do you have anything in the works with him, like potentially documenting, video wise, what you guys are working on towards maybe a video special or any other shows you might be working on? Because like I said, most of us know you from the Finding Bigfoot days of Discovery Channel and stuff. Anything more like that you would like to be involved with in the future? Like it seemed like you were one of the fan favorites, of course. It does seem like it's right up your alley, and we're so honored to have you here with us today. It'd be nice to see you again, as we do see you pop up now and again in some other specials, because you are still an expert in the field. Anything big planned?
I don't think I would want to do another TV show, honestly. I mean, Finding Bigfoot was good and everything. Don't get me wrong; it was a good TV show, but that's like saying, like, a good TV show is like I'm a really tall, short person. I don't really like television in general. I find the media to be shallow and superficial, even when it's real. And
Sounded like they rushed you too.
a lot of things aren't real that you see on TV,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Before they go out and film them and things like, reality TV is not well named, I don't think, because a lot of
it's something you would be more in charge of, so to speak.
I got that now.
Yeah.
I have that with the museum and the videos that we put out. I'll do side gigs or whatever. I do Proof is Out There, for example. Proof Is Out
that's
There,
the one. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
And when they reached out, I said, yeah, I'm happy to work with you as long as you don't ask me to say anything that I find to be not true.
Okay,
if you want someone's real opinion, I'm not going to toe the party line. I'm not going to tell the story as you see it. But if you want somebody who gives a real opinion, I'm happy to work with you. And I'll tell you what, I get callbacks from networks less than half the time. Or when they do call back, I'll say, they'll say, oh, but could you do this? It's no, I told you I wasn't going to do that. But we need that. I told you. I told you.
That's sensationalism.
Yeah, it's because it's not a.
You've got to keep your integrity intact. You've got to have that. Yeah.
That's just, everybody, we live in this influencer world where everybody wants to be somebody and put Instagram this and Facebook that and stuff. It's like, it's not about us, man. I just wish the Bigfoot community would get over themselves. It's not about us. It's about them, the animals. It's about the species. Let's do something good for them. Let's learn from them. So I don't think I would do another TV show because the museum, in a way, and again, Finding Bigfoot was a great show. Like, everything we did was legit. Yeah, we didn't have to take the helicopter to go somewhere. That's TV. That's, you're coming along an adventure with these nerds. But all the Bigfoot stuff was 100% real. We never faked anything. We never lied about anything. We wouldn't. They tried. They were encouraging us that direction for a season. Didn't happen. We wouldn't, and we made a great show because of it. Producers were on board with it and all that other stuff. But I don't know about other TV programs. And also, I run a museum. I've got a property. I've got the best wife in the world. Nothing personal. Anybody else has a different one. And a dog and all that other stuff. I don't have time for it. I don't have the interest in it. I don't like the medium, I guess, television in general. I don't learn about Bigfoot from the television. I don't watch I don't even watch the stuff I'm in. That tells you something. I don't watch the stuff I'm in. Because I'm not going to learn about Bigfoot from watching television. I'm going to learn about Bigfoot by going to the woods. So that's where I spend my time.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So I don't think I want to create that. But if I'm creating like little vignettes for the museum, but they trust me, when you see the YouTube page, they're okay. But they're not polished network sort of stuff at all. It's me walking around with a camera, and if something cool happens, I do some narration between and piece it together into something that's palatable. But it's not about being flashy or making a slick production or anything like that. It's real boots on the ground, gritty Bigfoot stuff.
Awesome.
I think it's better that way, though, Cliff. It is.
It's authentic.
It's authentic. Exactly.
This shallow, superficial, sheeny sort of slimy world we live in, I think that there's enough pop glitz everywhere you look, man. I think what people really want is authenticity.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't have a lot of pop glitz to offer. I'm not flashy. I say the wrong thing all the time. I'm incorrect a bunch. But you know what? I mean, if you know me, you know my heart's in the right place. And you know I'm going to tell you the truth. And you know that I'm going to give you something that's actually real. Whatever it is from, I may be incorrect sometimes, but I will not lie. What you're getting from me will be real. I don't know where else you can get that. And maybe there's probably a bunch of other places, but I don't look, so I don't know. Ignorance is
that's a great way to put it, because I will tell some stories on my podcast where I know anybody listening thinks I'm off my rocker, but it was real to me. It happened to me. It was my experience, and I'm just being open enough to share it with you. And if you don't want to believe it, that's fine. But it's my truth, and I'm not trying to, as you said, sensationalize it. I'm just trying to share it. And like something you said early on and today, you know, we all do believe, and there's different reasons. And then I try to put things in a box to just make it make sense. And John and I and Rick too, I've discussed at length. I'm like, man, I don't know enough research. I haven't done enough research. I put it in something at some point on our continent with apes and evolution. And I don't mean to water it down and make it just simple like that, but for me, that was what always worked. So today, hearing you talk, I was like, wow, he's saying what I've been believing for so many years. Like there's something there, a little touch in that bush you talked about. You know, there's a little piece of it that made me feel good. I was like, okay, I met one of my people now, you know. So I really appreciate your point of view on things.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep.
I'm just the great part is I'm just doing what I would be doing anyway.
Right.
Like literally, this is what I would be doing anyway. But with the museum component and the speaking engagements and that stuff, I've somehow managed to scratch a very meager living out of it, and I couldn't be happier. I'm so thankful.
That's great.
My livelihood. I met my wife on the TV show. She was basically a production assistant. I said, "Who's that?" And I eventually convinced her to marry me. I met my dog. We found my dog tied to a tree 10 inches long out in the woods, like air bait. Everything that's important to me has come from Sasquatch. And honestly, I'm just trying to do something right. Just trying to give something back. You know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's really cool. Cliff, I've learned a lot from you today, man. This has been entertaining. It's been educational. It's been great getting to know you. We're coming up a little bit over an hour, and that's about as long as we like to chat on these live things. But man, I would just like to say, anytime in the future you want to come back and chat, you're welcome, because this has been a lot of fun. This has been, like I said, entertaining, educational, and fun. I mean, and it's been great getting to know you a little bit over this last hour. I can't thank you enough. This is so cool.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Of course, if anyone's out in Portland area, come visit the NABC. Wherever you are, you could be a member if you choose. I think I tell people $6 a month. That's a beer and a tip, man.
Yeah.
Go back, watch all the previous videos. If you don't think they're cool, cancel it. If you don't think it's I know all the videos have to be worth $6, right? All of them together.
Definitely, yeah.
Just stream it. Like, check it out. Give me $6. Cancel it next month if you want. I don't think you're going to cancel it, because I think you're going to see that what we're doing has value and it's real and it's cool. But you know, that they teach their own. And of course, if you want to listen to my podcast with Bobo, Bigfoot and Beyond with Cliff and Bobo, you can go listen to there. It's a little bit less edited than the Animal Planet. We take out the F-bombs and stuff, but for the most, it's very much more raw than the Animal Planet show. And the Animal Planet show is great, of course. I enjoyed it, and it's gave me a lot I certainly learned a lot from it. But I'm doing way funner, cooler things now than I ever have been in all Bigfoot, my Bigfoot history. So
that's awesome. We'll share out all those links, to your social media and the YouTube and the podcast to make sure, we all get on board and learn more than what we possibly could learn in an hour with you. But I like to thank you as well. It's been great to meet you and a pleasure to have you with us here talking all things Bigfoot.
I appreciate it. I do.
Any last things, Brett?
No, I said it a minute ago. We've met one of our own. He's met more of his own, so it's all good. Yeah.
We have one final question here, I think, from Dino Geekstrong. And you may have covered this, but what got you first interested? Was it a sighting?
No, it was the evidence. It turns out I have a degree in music. And I got my degree from Cal State Long Beach down when I lived in Southern California. And the music department was a 45-minute walk from upper campus where I was taking GE classes at the time. And so I had a 2 or 3 hour break, not really long enough to go back to the rehearsal room and practice or go get lunch or something. So I'd spend my 2 or 3 hour break at college in the library, pulling books off of the shelves and subjects that I was interested in, which happens to be mostly science stuff. And one day I ran into a book that was a compilation of scholarly articles published in Northwest Anthropological Research Notes on the Sasquatch, written by Dr. Grover Krantz and various other scientists who were interested at the time. And I said, oh, look at this, Bigfoot. Because I've always had an interest in Bigfoot, but to me, it was just a monster, like a Godzilla sort of thing from leftover from my childhood, right? And funny, weird, quirky stuff. I mean, look at the rooms behind you. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when I started reading about the evidence that had been analyzed, whether it's the native stories from all over the continent or the foot morphology and how that affects the biomechanics of the walk and all this stuff, I realized, holy crap, not only are they big, quirky, funny, whatever thing, but they might be real as well. And so I decided, since I was already backpacking and camping, I decided to put that on the list of stuff to do, because at the end of the day, Bigfooting is basically camping with a purpose.
Yeah.
And
There you go.
that was back in 1993, 1994, when I'm first focused expedition. And here I am 31 years later, drowning in it every single day.
Nice.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure, Cliff. Thank you so much. And Rick and Brett, thank you for joining.
Yeah.
And
Anytime.
everybody in the chat, I appreciate you guys all being there. Thanks for your questions and for your tagging along with us on this journey today. It's been great. All right, guys. I'm going to end the stream. Thanks a lot,
Yep.
guys.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Cliff.